Hello, everyone. I am Kendall Tyson, licensed therapist and fellow Black expat living in Beijing. And I want to welcome you to another episode of Black and Abroad. And we have a treat tonight. One of my friends, Dr. Shannon Evans, hailing from the amazing Bahamas, currently living in China. She is a sixth grade teacher of English, and professionally, I'm going to read her brief bio. Professionally, she spent all of her adolescent life in the Bahamas for K through 12 and undergraduate. She knew she wanted to be a teacher at the age of 7, and that's what she spent a lot of time working toward. That's a really good goal. I definitely did not know that. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of the Bahamas in primary education. She left the Bahamas at the age of 21 to pursue a master's degree in counseling, school counseling. Okay, school counselors. She also interned as a school counselor and worked as a professional therapeutic day treatment counselor. Shannon moved back home in 2016 when she was 27, and she stayed there for 2 years until she moved to Beijing in 2018. She was meant to stay for about 14 months, like most people say they will do. But that 14 months turned into 3.5 years and 2 jobs later, and she's not quite ready to leave. So in the midst of this transition, leaving her family, she managed to complete an amazing accomplishment, completing her PhD in counseling education and supervision in 2019. So I want everybody to welcome Dr. Shannon Evans to Black and Abroad. Hey, girl, hey. I love your bio.
Thanks.
So before we get into the good stuff, even though we started with the good stuff, what I'd like to know is, who is Shannon Evans?
Man, this is a loaded question.
Always.
Right, the easy answer is I'm a 33-year-old Black Bahamian woman from Freeport Grand Bahama, the Bahamas. I love family. That's, I think, more than anything. I love my family. I love kids. I have 12 nieces and nephews.
Oh, wow.
10 nieces and nephews, 2 grandnieces. So
wow.
I'm getting up there. I know.
Girl.
So, I be trying not to feel old. It's hard though.
State of mind.
Right. Age ain't nothing but a number.
Yes.
So I feel like at the core of me, that's who I am, and that sort of informed my life choices. One of the things that brought me to Beijing to be a teacher. So yeah, I feel like that's the basic of who I am. And then you delve into some other things, the kind of friends that I am, someone who's pretty loyal, someone who's a nurturer, but also someone who needs her alone time because she's an introverted homebody and her social battery runs low very quickly and stays low for a very long time.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, I always ask this to people about their, journey into the expat life. And I'm wondering, was there any one major thing that happened, a long-held dream that made you decide to come to China?
When I moved back home in 2016, it wasn't super by choice. If I had the choice and there were no obstacles, no challenges, I probably would have stayed in the United States. Okay. So moving back home, moving back into the house with my parents after moving semi-independently was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
And I started to try to make a life of my own. I moved into a new apartment. I was not working as a teacher. I was working as a marketing rep. Mm-hmm. But the people that I saw at work were the same people that I saw at church. and the same people that I saw during my downtime. And I love those people, but it just felt like every day we're just doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I just got tired.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at moving abroad and what kind of opportunities were out there, just browsing the internet one day. And then I thought about two of my friends who were working for the same company in Shanghai. And one friend was somebody that I went to high school with. Another friend was somebody that I went to Hampton University with. So like, first I thought it was funny that two people from two different stages of my life were working for the same company in the same city.
It feels on purpose, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, let me see what the company is talking about. Let's see what's happening. And so went onto the website, sent in an application to work in Shanghai, got an email for an interview. At this point, I have not told anybody anything. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go on this interview. If it doesn't go well, no harm, no foul. Right. But if it does go well, then we have some planning to do.
Right.
So went on the interview, it went well. And the interviewer said, you know what? I think we're gonna send you to Beijing. I'm like, okay. Like, I know that they're different cities and I've visited them before, but that was a decade ago at this point. So I'm like, girl, I don't know the difference. Send me wherever. So after that, after I have the job offer letter, interview is finished. And I think this all happened maybe around like October or November of 2017. And I was supposed to leave in February of 2018. So that's when I tell my parents, like, hey, by the way, moving to China. My mother's like, ah? What?
Right, dropping bombs.
I'm like, what? Okay, just everybody calm down. Here's what happened. So explain to her what was going through my mind, what my process was. And my father was like, oh, only because he wanted somewhere new to visit. That's all.
Purely selfish means, right?
So my mother is the one that really like championed the research into moving to China. What kind of climate would it be for me as a Black woman? And, for me as somebody who's only lived in the Bahamas, only lived in the United States, like, what kind of situation would I be walking into? So she wanted me to be as informed as possible. I'm just over here, like, I'm 29, 28, about to be 29. Like, I'm just ready to go. I don't even care.
Right.
So we pushed my date back to the summer of 2018 to give me a little bit more time to prepare and time to work on my dissertation because I was working on my PhD at the time. And that was another concern, like if I go, will I be able to finish? Will I be motivated to finish? Which was a very real concern.
Yeah.
And then summer 2018, I said goodbye to my family in the airport in Freeport, and there was no turning back. Like, I walked through the security gates, went to the little cafe, got a hot dog and a Junkanoo Punch soda. Junkanoo Punch is something that's, made in the Bahamas. And this is something that I'm not gonna have for a while. So I'm like, get my Junkanoo Punch, get my hot dog. I've told my family, I'll see you in a year and change. Like, it's gonna be okay, whatever. As soon as I sat down, just
the reality sets in deep.
Listen to me. For the next 2 days of traveling, because I had to travel from home to Florida, then from Florida to Dallas, then Dallas to Beijing. And just that whole time, it's just like surreal. Like, every so often I had to tell myself, hey, you're moving to China. Like, please get that in. And when I got on the plane to in Dallas, going to Beijing, it was just like, there is really no turning back. Like, we're on this, whatever it was, 13, 14-hour flight. Like, this is it, sis. This is it. So
ooh, big things popping. It's like, what I appreciate is, and I swear my mom is the same, it's something about Black mothers.
Yes.
the pragmatic, no, we need you to be informed about
Yes.
what's happening. And just the simple fact that, we're talking to people, they don't really understand all of the navigating that we have to think about as Black women living in another country, even in our home countries.
Yep.
We just have to be a bit more aware and cognizant, right? So kind of being forward thinking about what our experience could potentially be like coming here, even though it's an amazing opportunity, which clearly you've reaped lots of benefits from. You got to be aware, because it's not for the faint of heart by any means.
No, ma'am.
So would you say that you're a risk taker?
In some ways, yes. I think that I can be impulsive, which I know definitely before I turned 30, I was sitting at the dining room with my mother, and it might actually have been talking about this moving to China. And she just looked at me and she's just like, you're a little bit too like flighty to be pushing 30. I need you to settle down. And I was just like, I don't quite know how yet. In my brain, it's like you're driving down the highway and there are a 1,000 exits and you're driving hundreds of miles per hour and you want to get off at every single exit. But of course, realistically, you can't.
Right.
But my brain is just we're always doing it. Like, what else can I do? What's a thing that I'm going to get joy from? What's a thing that's going to make me happy in this moment? Like all these things are roaming around in my brain. And so right then and there, it was this pull to move. It was just like, let's do it. But now we're in the middle of this pandemic and you have time off from school.
Junior year of the pandemic, like, people.
Yes. And you have time off from school. And usually in that time off, especially for expats, that's the time to be able to explore the country, to be able to explore the region, to go and see things that you would not have seen if you still lived on the western side of the world. Right. And for me, right now, the risk isn't worth it, right? Mm-hmm. To be able to just up and leave, even to go to another city right now, I'm not really feeling it because I'm well aware of the possible repercussions. So there are some times when the risk is worth it and it's just like, let's leave. And other times when it's just like, I'd rather play it safe.
Yeah, I think that's a cognizant way in which to approach it. It's just so much happening in the world. We know that things are popping up all over the place, and it would definitely be my luck that wherever I go, okay, cases are rising and you can't get back. Well, no. And I think like this whole pandemic is just really, I'm wondering, what's something that you've really learned about yourself as you've, sojourned through life as an expat during COVID?
Boy, I think one thing it has done is made me appreciate my alone time a lot, which could be a dangerous thing. But there was a point where I was fortunate enough that when I had re-entered the country in January 2020, I came at a good enough time to where I didn't have to undergo a full lockdown, but it was still sort of a partial lockdown, and there was still a lot of action happening. So, when you ordered Meituan, you ordered groceries, you had to go to the gate to pick them up. They couldn't come inside. And so for me, I was just by myself a lot, which was a very big difference from when I first came, because with my coworkers, I saw them every day. And then even on my off days, we spent time together and we started to develop relationships, develop bonds. Yeah. And so I went from seeing people just about every day to not seeing people for days at a time, not leaving my apartment for days at a time. Yeah. And then I started to enjoy not leaving my apartment for days at a time.
Oh, I
And it
know.
was just like at the point where if somebody sent a message like, hey, we're going out, do you want to go? And I'm just like,
Mm,
no. And
yeah.
so I learned to enjoy my own company, but then I started to have to navigate what balance would look like, and
Mm,
remembering that I still had these friends that I loved,
yeah.
and it would be unfair for me to just hole up in my house and not do anything with them, and then expect that they'll still be there after weeks or months of me doing this. And
Right.
so having to try to find the balance, I think that's one big thing that's been my thing for the past 2 years. Because even
Okay.
now, I work 5 days a week, and on my off days, I do want to just spend them alone. But I try to make sure that I can fit in some quality time with friends, as well as quality time by myself.
Yeah. I think the key word that you said, balance, is quite important in being able to live the life here, because a lot of times people are doing the polar opposite, either too much of the partying that's readily available in Beijing, or just with the nature of how some relationships transition, and how
Mhm.
people are transient here, spending a lot more time alone and really suffering in their mental health. So it is a job in itself trying to figure out what's the healthy balance,
Right,
and how do I learn myself in this process so that I'm not getting caught up in either end of the spectrum.
right, right,
So I want to kind of ask you, you shared some pretty important moments, but I'm wondering if you were to think back through the Rolodex of memories that you've accumulated here, what would be a defining moment for you as an expat?
I'll okay. So I'll go back to my little previous anecdote, and just that balance between friendship and being alone. Uh, for the first year, year and a half, I was working on my dissertation. So finishing up my PhD, and also working a full-time job, being 12, 13 hours ahead of my professors,
Mm,
and having that affect our level of communication greatly. Um, there were a lot of dark moments in that first year and a half. I loved my job, I loved my coworkers, but I missed my family. And doing this dissertation just added a lot of stress. It was very, very heavy. And there were so many times where I just wanted to give up. There were times when I just wanted to stop. Like, I just wanted to stop everything and just like barely exist.
yeah.
And finally, it was finished. In November 2019, we were done.
Mm,
And I was so looking forward to walking across the stage and getting my diploma. And I'm getting emotional. But I was
it's
just looking forward
okay.
to to having this big celebration to end, this journey that I had been walking that was just so rough. And then COVID happened,
Mm,
and I didn't get my graduation.
yeah.
I didn't get to walk across the stage. And that I was grieving this thing that I didn't know meant so much to me until I couldn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
So fast forward to June, at first, I'll say, like, when COVID hit in January, it only hit us. It only hit our side.
Yeah.
And so the rest of the world is watching, and they were watching us for the next 2 months to see what was going to happen. And so for a while, it was just, me in my head trying to figure out, how am I going to get to Virginia? Like,
Yeah.
is it going to be okay for me to get to Virginia? And then I'm thinking, this is January, February. By May, it's going to be fine. We're going to be okay.
Right.
We were not okay.
Because I
And
was
so
over in the
when
States, like tripping, like, oh, are my friends all right?
we were
Ooh.
not okay, we were
Yeah.
not all right. and when the rest of the world caught up, then it was like, I'm definitely not going to have a graduation now.
Yeah.
So in June of 2020, my sorority, I'm a part of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Shout out to all the Zetas. We just
Y'all just
celebrated
had
102 years. Yes,
an
102.
anniversary.
Our Founders Day. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So shout out to 102 years of being finer. Yeah, so my sorority decided to hold a virtual graduation. And so I think almost at the very last minute, I was able to submit my information. And so in June, towards the end of June, they had the virtual graduation. And then all of my friends, my closest friends who I worked with, they came over to my apartment. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and we watched the graduation. They brought a little bottle of bubbly, and we popped it, and I just wept because this was a celebration of coming out of a very dark place.
Yeah.
And just seeing the fruits of my labor. And yeah, I still have not held my dissertation in my hand. I have not held my degree in my hand. I don't know when I will be able to, but to know that I was supported, to know that these people who 2 years prior did not know me,
right,
but here they are cheering me on, it was just this like magical moment. So that I think knowing what it felt like to be very lonely here, so far away from everybody that you know and you love.
Yeah.
And then having that to show me I'm not as lonely as I thought I was. That was my defining moment.
That's really powerful, which honestly leads me into the next question. As a Black woman living abroad, we are a communal people. We are relational, I think, just to the core of who we are, right? So I'm curious, how does the concept of community and chosen family, how has that impacted your life and your overall mental health and well-being?
It's a constant theme in my life. So I think that I've honestly always been in transition from one thing to another. So when I was younger, at the age of, I was born in Freeport Grand Bahama. At the age of 10, both of my parents got transferred to work in Nassau, New Providence, which is another island. It holds our capital city in the Bahamas. And I had to move. So I'm leaving all my friends behind, leaving them behind everything I know. This is before social media was a thing. And so, that's it. I'm just not going to talk to these people again unless I visit home. And I was forced to make new friends. And so at my church was very instrumental in that, joining different ministries and, being a part of the youth ministry, the youth choir, making these new friends who became like sisters and brothers to me. And then moving back home at the age of 21, back to Freeport, where like I know people, but I don't really know people. It's been like a decade. We all grew up differently. So are we going to still be friends?
Hopefully.
Right. Theoretically. So it's like, am I still going to have friends, and again, church. And then moving to Virginia at the age of 21 later that year, through Hampton, through being in chapel, through being in the gospel choir, and then later joining Ivy Baptist Church in Newport News, Virginia, that helped me to make and sustain those friendships. There's people that I met there that I still talk to, and I left Virginia in 2016. And so, and of course now I have social media, so that makes it a lot easier. And so a part of all those transitions, like that's actually been the recurring theme of my life, that I have people around me, that I build a support system. And so when I first got to Beijing, it was, church that's the thread, right? And so I get here to Beijing and I'm like, will I find my tribe?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, and a coworker, she told me about a church here, the Beijing International Christian Fellowship. and she said that the young adults had a gathering called the Embassy. And I connected with them, and they eventually started Embassy Daytime, and that's where I found my tribe, or a part of my tribe. And since then, like, I did that for a while, and then once COVID hit, made things a little bit more difficult, and then I got a new job. I moved to going to what we call bake church, so going to church on the Sunday, or the Saturdays of Blizzard one time, and sort of expanded my tribe. And so when you talk about like how has this been for my mental health, it brings in that sense of familiarity.
Yeah.
And so even though this is a very new place, a very new situation, I still have little bits and pieces, little elements of my previous lives.
Right.
And so it's not as daunting anymore. I don't feel uncomfortable trying to navigate, because I know that there is at least one or two persons that I can count on and that I can call and just be like, I need a little bit of help. And so I'm so fortunate in that so many of the people that I've met, they're like sisters and brothers to me. And I just celebrated my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and seeing the outpouring of love from these people that, I've been in China only 3.5 years. And for some of these people, they've only known me for about a year or so. And seeing all of that love and hearing all of their words, like, I was a bucket of tears the entire weekend. Yeah. And it's just been so uplifting. So even when I'm tempted to sort of withdraw into myself, when I'm tempted to sort of cut myself off from everyone, I can't go more than, like, if I missed church this Sunday for whatever reason, if I was just like really exhausted and just could not leave for the day, next weekend I'm going to be in church. Like, I'm not going to miss more than 2 Sundays in a row of meeting with people, of seeing my tribe and getting that love and that energy to keep me sustained for the next week.
Yeah, that's important to understand not only where your help comes from, but it allows you to show up as your best self when you're able to be in the midst of those who know you and accept you, and who are able to heap, the gratitude and the love and the support onto you, which helps us to be able to learn to accept it with more ease, right? Yes. So yes. I'm curious, like, as women of the diaspora living in Beijing, coming from, different cultures and things of that nature, even though, we're Black women, there's lots of subcultures amongst our big umbrella, right? I'm curious about how the culture that you were raised in, how it's influenced your thoughts and beliefs and attitudes about mental health.
Yeah. So the Bahamas. I'll talk about the broader community and then bring it in.
Okay.
While I was growing up, I don't think mental health was as big of a deal as it should have been.
Yeah.
I don't think that it was focused enough on. Yeah. I think that you just had members of your family that, you just referred to as a little like, she couple cards short of a full deck, we don't talk about these. We don't talk about Bruno. No. Right? So
Bruno had the most sense out of everybody.
Hello.
Listen.
So that's the energy in the communities. And maybe we had a school counselor when I was in primary school, but I don't know who that was. In high school, again, maybe we had a school counselor. We had a guidance counselor, the person that you saw in 11th, 12th grade, right, when you talk about getting ready to go to college. We had a guidance counselor. But did we have a school counselor? I don't think so. Again, if we did, I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
And so when I started teaching, even before I started like in the school, for for our undergrad degree, you have to do a lot of like practices before you can graduate. Before you can do your final teaching practice, you do these little like mini practices. And just being in the classroom, like we took one special education class as teachers. And being in the classroom, looking at some of these kids and realizing that they don't quite have the ability to take whatever issues are going on at home, drop them off at the school gate and come inside, ready for it.
Right.
They bring everything with them. And so they're sitting down hungry or upset because somebody yelled at them the night before, annoyed because their hair isn't fixed the way that they want it to be fixed. Just all these things that are going on in their little world, which for us might not seem like a big deal because we've lived life, but they're kids.
Right.
They're 7, 8, 9, 10. This is their life. And seeing all of that and just seeing the way that we handled it as teachers, it was just like we just sort of try to push through so that we can get that lesson taught, because we're on deadlines. We have things to do, and it's a lot of pressure on us as teachers to make sure that you move from one level to the next.
Right.
And so it was just too much. I said, you know what? I want a school counseling degree because this is a lot going on.
Yes.
And I was like, even if I don't use it as a counselor, even if I come back into the classroom, at least I have a little bit more knowledge about, what's happening with these kids. And so that's what led me to start my first expat journey as a graduate student. Excuse me. So that, I think, going off to school made me realize just like how differently we viewed these things. Going to Virginia and seeing this presence of school counselors and experiencing for myself, having two students who they were brothers. One was in, I think, 5th grade and the other one was in kindergarten, and they lost their mother. And having to help them like navigate grief. Grief hits differently when you're in 5th grade. And, especially for him, he was acting out and talking back. And his teacher was just like you need to come and get him because I don't. And he just missed his mom. And the realization that she's not coming back is just slowly coming to him. And he can't do anything about it. And he shouldn't have to because he's in 5th grade, but it sucks that this thing is happening to him. And it's just like, how would we have dealt with that when I was in 5th grade? It would have been all on the teacher to try to soothe that student while trying to teach 20, 30 other kids. And so, that was seeing the difference really struck a chord with me. And then in 2018, a lot of stuff happened in my life and took me to like a really like dark place. I was like, I need a therapist. Couldn't find one.
Or let me ask you, is it that you couldn't find one, or you couldn't find one that fit your needs, that looked like you, that made you comfortable?
Could not find one. Home in the Bahamas.
Oh, wow.
I asked around. So at this point, I'm in Freeport Grand Bahama.
Okay.
Asked around. There was a therapist who visited once every 2 weeks. But was based in Nassau. So I'm like,
okay.
Cool. There was another therapist who I think I tried phoning her, did not work. I emailed her, did not hear anything back. By the time she emailed me back, this is the beginning of 2018. By the time she emailed me back, I was already in China. She's like, hey, do you still need? Nope, sure don't. Thank you.
Oh, wow. I'm so sorry.
We push through, we move because that's what we do. We adapt, right? Exactly. And we keep it pushing. And that that is what it looked like in the community.
Mm.
Uh, Now, though, I will say, like, I have friends who are therapists who have gone off to school, who have come back home to the Bahamas, who have practices or who are working in the schools. And I think as more millennials are coming up and getting positions of power, then the conversations are being changed a bit, and the shift is happening where, we recognize what being burnt out means. We recognize what having all of these different things going on in our head, what that means, and we need to get help. And it's not as bad as it was when I was growing up. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that. But I'm more grateful for the fact that, like, while that was happening in the wider community, in my family, especially with my parents, they were always concerned about my mental health,
Mm-hmm.
always. And it could be through simple questions, just how are you, and being available, and would just sit on my bed, just like, let's
Be
talk.
present.
How are
Yeah.
you doing? How are you feeling? And of course, there were times as a teenager, I'm like, all right, you're doing a
Leave me
lot.
alone.
Please.
Good.
Okay. But it looking back, like, not everybody had those moments with their parents, and not everybody had that kind of support. So I'm
Right.
super grateful for that, because even like when I was looking for a therapist, my mother was also trying to help me, trying to
Yeah.
find somebody that I could talk to.
Yeah.
And her being the Black mother that she is, she's like, you can talk to me. You can talk. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's not like the same. Like, I need to talk to somebody I don't know. So I can just
Yes.
like
Let
word
it out.
vomit. I don't
Yeah.
need you to catch feelings if you realize,
Woo, 'cause listen, if you
something
have not
happened
been
5 years
trained,
ago.
okay, if you have not been trained to not take personally how even in
Okay.
your best moments, that still might have caused me harm.
You gotta.
Listen, that's a whole nother conversation to have. I'm still having it with my mom, and she a counselor too. And it's kind of like you said a lot about the barriers, the systemic barriers, the structural barriers, the cultural barriers, the thing that keep us separate from the help that's widely available
Yeah,
to
that
us. And
care.
I keep thinking, like, I want to ask you, what's something that you think it'll take to be able to shift the narrative and open up the availability, in the Bahamas or wherever it is that you find yourself living?
We have a saying that if you don't hear, you can feel.
Mm,
And it's really that if you don't listen, if you don't listen to the cries of people,
mm,
then you're gonna be impacted
yeah,
negatively,
yeah,
adversely by the results. And I'm hoping that it won't come to that. But I think we hit a turning point. And I think that mental health wellness is just more important now than it was before. And I think people are feeling that, especially with, you know, like, let's say, for instance, with jobs, you know, baby boomers, they job loyalty holds a lot of weight,
yeah.
especially in the Bahamas. You have people who've been working a job for 20, 30 years.
Mm,
Uh, and they don't understand when somebody wants to quit after 1 year or 2 years or a couple of months. But people who are younger are doing it for their mental health. Like,
right,
you're not about to work me like a dog, have all of these expectations of me, don't give me any grace, and then expect that I'm going to sit here for another 20,
exactly,
30 years. That's not
exactly.
what's about to happen. And so it's forcing workplaces to challenge the way that they've been thinking,
Yeah,
because either you're going to have a high employee turnover
turnover.
rate, or you're going to figure out how to hold on to your employees without threatening them,
Right,
without making them feel like they have to stay. You need to create an environment where they want to stay.
exactly.
you know they can take mental health days. Let them let them take a day. Let them. Why would you want somebody to come into work that's irritated, that's tired, especially if you work in a customer service driven field, which is so
Right,
many businesses in the Bahamas? You want somebody who's cranky and irritated interacting with your customers? Because, baby, if I'm cranky and irritated, you don't want me interacting with your customers. I'm gonna forget.
That's called self-awareness. Listen.
Okay. As professional as I am, as yes, ma'am, yes, sir, as I am, I'm going to forget. Because if I'm doing that day in and day out, come on.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a shift that's happening. We can't just keep doing things the way that we've been doing them and expect that people are going to hang around.
Yeah. And there's a really big generational divide with that very attitude. Because we're more at this point, like you said, the transitions between careers, choosing careers, what we want, not dealing with burnout, not dealing with inappropriate bosses, and those particular things, not staying in a place that's harmful, really understanding our worth and our value, being able to speak about, I'm anxious, I have depression, I've had thoughts of suicide, I may have self-harmed at one point. I try to have these conversations, with older people, and they're always interesting. Because when you think about it, I tell them, like, y'all have been through the very same things. It just didn't have a name for it. Or the name might have been there, but it was so rooted in, it's still rooted in white supremacy and European standards. And then it's, what they would tell me is, we don't have time for that. We don't have time to sit and be anxious and depressed and wallow. And I'm like, but that's not what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's, I don't know. I know that there's so much like magic to be found in the intersection of old ways of being, old thoughts, traditions, and what's newly available. I just wonder what it looks like, and
I laugh because I think of an office setting where you have baby boomers and then you have the millennials working in one office, in an open office. And you could have somebody that, comes and says, hey, I need to take a day. Like, everything ain't quite right. I just need to take a day. These stark difference in responses. What you need to take a day for? What's wrong with you? Why you can't just come to work? If you well enough to do X, Y, and Z, you well enough to come to work.
You ain't throwing up, dying, and bleeding.
And then on the other side, it's like, yeah, you should get some rest. You should take, we can cover X, Y, and Z. It's fine.
Exactly.
A day not gonna kill us. And I am praying that, as a teacher, to get my students to do something, I use two things, or I try to use two things more often than not. I model and I praise good behavior.
Yeah.
And so when I want my students to take out a particular folder, I write on the board, orange folders. I say verbally, everyone take your orange folders out. If I have my orange folder, I hold it up. This is what I want. And you have one student who does it. Oh, thank you, student A. Oh, and the rest of them, oh. So they take, oh, thank you, student B. Oh, thank you, student C. I have one who, if I'm scanning the room and I miss him, it's like, ahem.
Listen, I'm gonna remind you that I'm here. That's called self-advocacy. Listen.
And that baby will advocate, and he will not stop until I say thank you. Mm. And doing that, it requires a shift in thinking, because it's so easy to say, Steve Neff, why don't you have out your folder yet? What is wrong with you? What's going on?
Yeah.
And then you gotta pull up out. Thank you, student E. Thank you, student G. Student F sees like, oh. Sometimes you might have to say, hey, student F, look at your other classmates. What do they have that you don't? And he's like, oh. Because he's not trying to be defiant. He just needed a little reminder to get here, to be here in the game. And so it works with adults too. It takes a little bit longer because, especially with older adults, they've been used to behaving in a certain way and they've been allowed to behave in a certain way. And so it becomes disrespectful when you challenge those ways. And so I think, like, for me, I try to praise the good behavior and just try to say out loud, like, that was a really nice decision because of X, Y, and Z. Like,
Yeah.
it'll probably lead to blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about the benefits of what that kind of decision, would bring. What kind of benefits would there be? And then maybe, just maybe, the Lord is going to work on the hearts and minds of the other people that are within earshot. And maybe, just maybe, they're going to start to see that we can do things differently. So that's my hope.
I hear. And so what I hear is you're sharing how you positively impact the communities that you currently reside in. What other things do you feel you do intentionally to make a positive impact in this world?
I'll circle back. I know I've talked about church a lot, but I'll circle back. Yes, that's a very deep part of who I am. Yeah. And I find that when I find a church home, then I feel a lot more centered. And especially after the pandemic hit and I changed jobs. And so now I'm working where I'm free on the actual weekends. Being able to join the larger church community and join these different ministries has been such a blessing. And for one, I sing on the worship team. Now, I can carry a tune, but only for like a little bit. I'm not out here Aretha Franklin, Jennifer Hudson, like that's not my life, right? But singing for Jesus, worshiping through song, that's something that's super important to me. And I've had people come up to me and just be like, oh, you just blessed me so much today. Or if it's a Sunday that I didn't sing, somebody will walk up, you didn't sing this week. I was hoping that you would sing. Like, I miss hearing your voice. I'm like, are y'all sure?
You got the right one.
Right. Is it somebody else that lives like me? And it's not me. It's definitely God using me. Yes. And so when I sing, they hear God, and I get to pray for these people. And that's how I feel like I can impact my community through those ways that hopefully praying for somebody, singing life over somebody, that hopefully they're going to go out and they're going to make these positive decisions that will impact others. And so I think that's one way that I've been able to do that. And then another way has been through my podcast. So last year in February, I started the Brown Girl in Beijing podcast. And it started as just woohoo. It started as just a way to share, my experiences in Beijing to a wider audience, so that I didn't have to like retell the same story a number of times to different people that asked. And it came from a blog. So I had a blog my first year in Beijing, and people were just like, yeah, if you could just do this in podcast form, that would be great, because I don't have time to just sit and listen. And then, sit and read. And then two friends of mine that are married, Rodney and Nadia, they have a podcast, the R in Love podcast, and they had me on as a guest and talking about my life in Beijing, and people were just so interested. And then another friend, Dawn, who is a content creator, she's a branding expert for different companies. She had me do one of her takeovers for Black History Month last year. And that was just like, it was so well received, she was saying. And I was like, okay, well then maybe I can do this. Maybe I could just get in the front of the camera and just talk to people. And so that's what started it. And since then, like, I've had 2 seasons. I just wrapped the second season a couple of weeks ago. And I'll say in maybe about December, I was starting to feel like, the views are a little low, and, the listens on, because I do it through Anchor FM. So it gets released through Anchor to Apple, Google, Spotify, and then I also do it on YouTube. And just like, the views for the first season were definitely better than the second season. And it's just like, should I continue? Like, do people want to hear? And legit, the day after I had these thoughts, and I'm talking to God, like, this takes a lot of work. do I need to continue this or can I just give it up? The day after, this guy had followed my Instagram page for the podcast. I didn't really think anything of it. And then he sent me a message. He's just like, hey, man, like, your podcast has been a blessing. Just listening to it puts me at ease. I'm supposed to be coming to Shanghai in a couple of months, and it just makes me feel so much more comfortable about coming. And then he talks about, you know, wanting to be able to find a faith-based community and not thinking that they existed. But after watching my podcast, it's like they do exist. Like, you just got to know where to find them.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, I was ready to just say, oh, I'm so happy. He does, man. He does. And that just blessed me because, you know, and even maybe like a week or two ago, my sister-in-law, she sent me a message about because I talked about this on my podcast, and she listened to that episode. And she was like, man, like, I'm so grateful for that because sometimes I feel like giving up. And that just inspired me to keep going. Like, if you can keep going, I can keep going. This is my sister-in-law who's known me for all of my life, right? And so hearing that come from her, I'm just like, all right, I'll keep going. Even if I don't have nothing to talk about, I'll get up there and I'll just talk.
We can find something.
Right. Something's going to happen.
That leads me into like the thought of resilience, right? And like, what would you tell somebody that's at a point where they feel like they don't know if it's whatever their mission is, maybe they just really haven't tapped into it or are fully rooted in it, that's just at that, you know, the breaking point, like, I don't see the fruits of these seeds that I've been planting and watering. Like, what's a piece of cogent advice that you could share with them?
I love that you talked about seeds and watering, and I'll give two responses, I guess. The first, if you are faith-based, pray, and it doesn't have to be some kind of elaborate prayer. Just tell the Lord how you're feeling. You know, if you're struggling, you want to give up, just express those things, right? It makes you feel better to let it out, but it also creates that space for you to receive something that he might be sending to you, sending your way. And you talk about planting. Sometimes we don't see the fruit in the way that we thought the fruit was going to come. We don't see the like what our idea of the manifestation of that seed is. Like, it can come in another way.
I'm not supposed
and
to
be
cry
open to that
now, Shannon. Okay. Girl.
Listen, if I had to go through it, you got to go through it too. But that I think is the biggest thing, to not be boxed in by what you think the fruit of your labor is supposed to look like, right? You're expecting apples and you're seeing oranges and you think that it's not working, when in reality, maybe you were just an orange person and you didn't realize it, you know, and it's still fruit. It's still good. It just looks a little different. So I'd say definitely if you're faith-based, that's your starting point. You know, if I go into some other stuff, like we're not going to end this. So I'll leave that there. But if you are not, if you are not faith-based, I think the latter still applies. You need to identify what kind of results you're looking for. And maybe start to work backwards, you know, like, why aren't you seeing those kind of results? And maybe in your methodology, you find that, maybe this is supposed to bring me to somewhere else. Be open to the possibility that your success could look a little different from what it looks like right now. And that also, you know, try to find some contentment in the journey. And don't just worry too much about what you think the destination is supposed to be. Because your blessing, whether you believe or not, your blessing could very well be in the journey. You know, who are the people that you met along the way? What are the skills that you've picked up along the way? What are the attributes that you've picked up along the way? Because those are things that can help you when you get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
Appreciate them now. Don't just wait until, you know, hindsight is 2020. Appreciate them.
Yeah. I fully agree. And you were literally talking about identifying best hopes. Um, what is the outcome? I want to start with identifying what's the
Yeah.
outcome, you know, and then in education, you know, we do the whole backward planning. What are the things that I can do? What's the process looks like? What does my journey look like instead of the destination? What does a journey
Mm-hmm.
look like that's going to help develop me into the individual that I'm supposed to be, whether I know who that is today or not?
Right.
You'll be illuminated as you go through the process, always, always.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I want to ask you, you know, there's so much to do in this city, and one of the things that I love and dislike about being an you know, an intellectual, strong, supportive, nurturing Black woman is the whole strong Black woman trope.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it look like for you to disabuse yourself of that trope and engage in radical self-care? Like, what do you do?
First, I'll say that it's still taking me some time to accept certain things from people, because, you know, I've worked so hard to be independent, worked so hard to be independent of my parents.
Yeah.
And, you know, living in China, especially with this new job, I've been able to do that. And so people telling me that they want to do this, they want to do that for me. And I'm just like, I can do it myself. Thank you very much.
Got it.
That part I'm still working on. But a big thing of me sort of shedding the strong, independent Black woman, I allow myself to cry in front of other people and to be in that vulnerable space in front of other people. And just, I'm a lot more honest. You know, when people ask me how I'm doing, and I can gauge, you know, if you want the real answer or what. And if they want the real answer, baby, I'm not well. I'm not okay. This has been a really rough week for me. These things have happened. I wanted these things to happen. I'm just stressed. And there are some people that will just stop and pray with me. There are some people that will comfort me. There are some people that will cry with me. And that helps me feel like I don't have to, like Louisa from Encanto, I don't have to be the strong one all the time, right? No, that was a blessed movie, okay? That was a blessed movie.
Like, I don't even think they know it. I don't even think, like, and therapists everywhere are just like, all we talk about is Encanto. Grown people.
All the themes.
Everything.
Yeah. And that, just knowing that I don't have to be that strong, has then led me to being able to take myself out for brunch, being able to get a massage. Just, they say, there's this like meme that says, you know that you're an adult when you realize that you don't need a reason for birthday cake. And that's very enlightening because, you know, when I'm like, hey, I can just order it. Exactly. When I want a massage, it doesn't need to be like, oh, I've just been working real hard this month. If I wake up on a Tuesday and say, oh, I need a massage, Wednesday, I'm getting a massage. Like, it's not even that deep. And so making sure that I have those moments of listening to my body, and then feeling okay enough to respond to my body's needs, and not holding it back and trying to be strong for other people, but also allowing other people to be strong for me. So yeah, I think that's been my like radical version of self-care.
Yeah, I think what I hear is a transformation in understanding one that I try to share and live by is you don't have to earn your rest. For so long, we've felt, and you know, society rightfully, you know, is to blame, that we have to be at the point of exhaustion. We have to do for everybody else. You know, we have to put ourselves last. You have to show up. And I know imposter syndrome is really a really big thing for professional Black women, literally everywhere in the world, and especially here in Beijing.
Kendall, that would be another hour.
And we probably have to have this conversation another time, right? So I'm gonna write this down.
Come on the podcast. Come on the Brown Girl in Beijing podcast. We'll talk about it.
Okay, we're gonna schedule that. We got season 3. Okay. Yes. But it's just like the thing that I want to just say is do it when you feel like it. Like you said, you can eat birthday cake whenever you want to. You don't have to earn your rest. And for us to better understand that in order to show up in these spaces as our best, most authentic, happy, jovial and communal selves, we have to prioritize our
Yes.
health and our wellness, our mental health,
Yes.
especially, and
Yes.
learning that it's not a weakness.
Yep.
Vulnerability is strength. And so we have two more questions, and one of them that I'm, curious about is, what is your hope for the advancement of mental health in the Black community?
Just for us to begin to see people as whole beings, and understanding that mental health wellness is a part of that. And that if you are not well mentally, you're not well. Just like if you're not well physically, you're not well. You have a broken heart, you're not well emotionally, you're not well. And instead of trying to, I don't know, maybe single it out and try to make it seem like this bad thing, just the same way that you give treatment for, something that's broken on your body, an organ that's failing, the same way that you do that, the same way that you comfort somebody whose boyfriend of 3 years is just broken up with her, or whose wife of 20 years has just left him for somebody else, the same way that you would give comfort is the same energy you need to have when somebody says, yo, I'm unwell. You can't see what's wrong. I can't fully describe what's wrong, but something is off.
Yeah.
Something is not quite right.
Yeah.
Just because it's unseen, just because you don't know what it is, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, doesn't mean that it's not real, and doesn't mean that it's not affecting the whole person. When I practiced counseling, I operated a little bit under like Gestalt theory.
Okay.
And that's just of the whole person.
Right.
And seeing that there are so many moving parts, and you have to be willing to address those moving parts, because you can't just fix one thing and figure, all right, we done. You good, go. Right. You got to see that thing through.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want for us as Black people, no matter where we are, to just be willing and open, to embrace the things that you don't know, and be willing to learn about those things that you don't know. Don't remain ignorant. Right? Don't just pass it off because it's something that you're not used to, because that's what got us here. And we want to move on. So, be willing to learn. Be willing to learn.
I think that's valuable advice. Well, I would definitely say, before we hit the rapid fire question round, do you have any final parting word? Now, I had to do it, right? Do you have any final parting words for the community of people that will be tuning into this episode?
As a Black expat, do the thing. I think that's just always going to be my advice. Research, but if there's a dream that you have, there's a leap that you want to take, do the thing. Whatever it is, look it up, make informed decisions. But don't let like people's opinions hold you back. Like for me growing up, I did a lot of living for other people. I made decisions that would benefit other people, make them proud of me, make them feel good about what I was doing. And then I had to take it back, because that was it was messing with me.
Yeah.
And so being in Beijing, while there's still a little bit of that, there's a lot more of doing things that I believe are right for me, based on like my relationship with God, based on who I believe that I am. I'm making more decisions that benefit me. They also benefit the people that are connected to me because of the nature of our relationships.
Right.
But those decisions aren't based on the people connected to me. So I think that that's been a very important shift. And so if you are out there, you're listening, do the thing for you.
Yes. And I think that those words stand by themselves. I just want to add that you're not selfish for doing those things for yourself. You are not the black sheep. for doing those things for yourself. You are not arrogant or any of the messages that you may have received, right? Because again, you cannot do well for everybody else if you are depleted.
Yep. You're too busy pouring out of your cup.
Yes. So we're going to do the rapid fire, and then we're going to end with you sharing your socials. You ready?
Okay. I'm not sure, but let's go.
What's one word to describe yourself?
I don't know, intelligent.
Okay. What's your favorite country to visit?
Oh no. This is stressful. Maybe somewhere in the Caribbean.
Okay.
One of the Caribbean countries. I'm not gonna single anybody out. I don't want anybody to feel bad.
You don't want anybody to be mad. Sprite or ginger ale?
Ginger ale.
What brand?
Okay, so
because you know it matters. It matters.
All right, listen. Okay. I'm gonna talk about being here in China. Schweppes, their brand of ginger ale is a little bit sweeter.
Okay.
So I can take that, on some days. But is it
Canada Dry?
Do we have Canada Dry here? Because that's on a day. If we don't, whatever the equivalent is that we have, that's on a day when it's like you need a drink and you're not trying to have no alcohol.
Exactly. But I need something. That's it.
And that one. Okay.
So favorite musical group?
Girl. Maverick City Music.
I've never. You're gonna have to hit me to that.
Oh, I love them so much. They're a gospel group. Yes, they're a gospel choir group. Yes.
Okay, you're gonna have to hit me to that. Favorite artist?
I don't know. This is hard because I don't choose, like, I'm not very good at making absolute decisions. So questions like this are always hard. I don't know. Let's go with Travis Green.
Okay.
The gospel artist.
We already talked about, like, what do you do for self-care, but if you had to think of one thing that you could do literally every week, what would it be?
Get a massage. Hands down.
I need that information too. Okay.
Yes, I got you.
All right. One thing you love about yourself.
I love my smile. I love when I smile like this. Definitely, you know that I'm genuinely content, genuinely happy.
What's something that you miss about home?
Family. Just we had a new baby born past couple months, and I don't know when I'm gonna get to see her, and it's just that it's heartbreaking. But my family is growing and they're moving on without me.
Well, you're just in a different place because
I know, but
back soon. but I know how difficult it is. Like, my sister's about to have her my third niece Trinity, and it can be challenging. Two more. Favorite inspirational quote, affirmation, or scripture?
Oh, Romans 8:28. We know that all things work together for good to them that love the Lord and are the called according to his will and purpose.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's on my wall with my list of post-it notes for sure.
Come on, yes.
And lastly, what do you love most about your culture?
The love. Just the love. Whether you've known somebody for 10 years or 10 minutes, you can feel the love. Being able to, especially being here in Beijing, I've been able to connect with Black people from the Caribbean, Black people from America, Black people from the continent of Africa, and just the love, man. You just feel at home. You just feel at home.
Yeah, it's this thing we got.
Yeah, like I see you, you see me.
Exactly.
Where? We see all this other craziness going on, but we're
it's not like okay. Well, I am so grateful for this. You've blessed our audience, myself included tonight. So I
I'm glad,
want you
man.
to share your social media. How can people get in touch with Dr. E?
All right. Follow me on Instagram, Dr. Baby _ BGIB. So DRBABY _ BGIB. And that you can stay up to date with podcast stuff. You can stay up to date with things that I see in Beijing, just those personal things. Yeah, that's the best way. And from there, you can hit the link in my bio to see how you can keep up with the podcast.
Okay, cool. We'll definitely share that information in our show notes on the YouTube page. I just want to thank you again for coming and sharing and being so open and honest. It was truly a gift.
I'm glad, man. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here. Appreciate
Awesome. Well, you have an amazing evening, and everyone, we want to sign off and say thank you and stay tuned for the next session of Black and Abroad. Peace, y'all.